Let's now try to understand a multimodal analysis from the perspective of a social practice or its recontextualization. A recontextualization of social practice happens frequently in various kinds of texts, which also include some kind of visual resources also. So, interpreting and decoding such recontextualization of a social practice may help us to develop a deeper understanding and a theory of critical discourse analysis, which also includes multimodal analysis. Recontextualization of social practice is useful as it draws our attention towards particular sequence of an activity, various norms and values which are associated with a certain social practice in a society, and in this way how scripts are used for doing discourses. Discourses are not only said, rather they are done to produce certain impact on their prospective audience. Therefore, understanding in which social practice a certain discourse or a visual falls and how its recontextualization has been made may help us in developing some kind of reasonable theory of MCDA, which is multimodal critical discourse analysis. If we go deeper into this, we can understand that discourse can be thought of as representing knowledge of what goes on in a particular social practice. By that we mean that it tells us about the ideas about why it is the way it is, a certain kind of thing or element of our idea, why it is the way it is, and then who is involved in a particular phenomena and what kinds of values are associated with it. Discourses also tell us why the scripts are reasonable ways of acting in the world. So discourses we have already discussed that produced in certain social practices, and observing, analyzing discourses in the realm of those social practices can be very useful. Van Leeuwen and Wodak argue that social practices can be recontextualized in language through substitutions, deletions, additions, and reordering in order to create a certain impact on the audience. Let's try to see what social practices may include. Social practices may include participants of an event, various activities performed in that event, usually performed in that event, then ideas, values, and attitudes of the people, social relations, objects, instruments, and setting and causality. Why certain things are performed in a certain way and why not in other ways. For example, a university document, in order to see that what kind of social practices are recontextualized, we may look upon which causality and identities have been deleted or substituted or added from the previous practices. It helps to focus on a critical, socially driven multimodal analysis where we reveal the ideologies buried in the use of certain elements of social practices and not use of other elements of social practices. That means deletion of certain elements, or simultaneously maybe some more additions to some kind of social practices. If we just look at the promotional advertisement of universities these days, their prospectus, their brochures, their promotional messages on social media, mainstream electronic media, newspapers, etc., we can see that now universities develop their promotional messages more in the realm of customer relations. They try to build a link with them and their possible customers. They see prospective students as and their parents as their customers. Instead of focusing on their educational ways, they probably focus on more glaring, socially attractive ways to make them their actual students. They attract students for economic reasons. That's why there can be seen a change in the promotional ways of universities. This is quite a deviation from previous social practices which were employed by various universities across the world. The critics of such a change in social practice argue that now universities operate more like public institutions, and it ceases to be operated along with priorities based on experiences of professional employees. It doesn't focus on what their faculty has achieved, or what kind of professional attitudes they focus on. Rather, they focus on a criteria which is based on more generic norms of management in any other public or private organization, as they focus on attracting more customers instead of prospective students. Employees become unprofessional as their energies are increasingly diverted away from former core activities to showing that business targets are being met. So university also focus on that they need to attract a certain number of admissions in order to meet their economic needs or in order to fulfill other requirements. For example, universities focus much on brochures and vision statements are kept bold to attract more audience. Similarly, they show vision which needs to be fulfilled, and describe staff that may be attractive, popular to the audience, maybe a very popular professor working in their universities or has been associated with the university as an alumni. They focus on it, and then they focus on certain promotional strategies and activities which are important to engage more audience instead of their scholarly outlook. The analysis of such changes in social practice in a study reveal that such documents contain semiotic modes in different ways, relying on their specific affordances in the time and space and interrelationships with their possible or prospective customers. So such changes in social practice can actually help us to understand the changing ideologies, changing power relationship, changing economic preferences, as well as changing norms, both academic, social, cultural, and political norms in a society also. Such promotional outlook of universities across the world also help us to understand the kind of economic constraints universities across the world are going through at the moment. So therefore they need more students to meet their financial needs. Similarly, we can understand various promotional aspects of other public institutions also, in order to see that what kind of recontextualization of social practices have been made, and this may probably help us to understand and develop a better multimodal critical discourse analysis.